Good morning and welcome. This is the Patriot Radio News Hour. I am your solo host today, Jason, and Joe's got a secret mission outside the country, and he's going to be back on Monday. So he was unable to join us as he's got other things going on right now. So that leaves it up to me to finish off the week, and I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a break for the numbers and the news a little bit, because you get to a Friday, so, sometimes you just want to listen to something. I even when I'm taking a break, I like to listen to really good information. So I've got something that I'm going to play for basically the balance of the hour. I'll cut in a little bit and have some comments, but gold and silver is what we do. If for some reason this is the first day that you've ever turned this radio show on, well, you found a gold and silver company that's been around, getting closer to 30 years, based out of Arizona. Myself, I broadcast and I operate the physical office in Colorado, and we've been giving people wealth insurance for a long, long time. Wealth insurance meaning protection from inflation from central bank run entities across the planet that want to steal from you. And gold and silver, being not of a currency, not an idea, it's a physical, actual thing, will protect your hard-earned savings. I don't use the word investment with gold when I talk to new customers or even old customers, because I look at investment as, hey, it's the 1980s, and I put some money in a fruit stock. It was called Apple. And years later, you got millions of dollars worth of stock because you invested in a company that became very, very successful. That's an investment, because an investment is, I put my money in this other company's stock. It's worth nothing now. It's called Enron, and there was some corruption going on there, and the whole thing crashed, right? So investment to me can give you gains or losses. Gold, I don't believe, is investment, because an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. A 1 ounce gold coin, a $20 Liberty, the old gold that we spent for almost 150 years. The $20 gold coin was an ounce of gold, and it was always could buy you one cow. If you have that $20 Liberty today, and I don't have the website up, but we're selling those in the $2,700 range, those coins. So a lot of people think, well, my gold went up. Well, it didn't really go up. Your ounce of gold, it still buys you one cow, because the dollars that buy the cow, you need more dollars. The dollars to buy the gold, you need more dollars. The only thing that changed here was not the cow or the gold. The thing that changed was the currency. And in 1913, this country was tricked into putting a private group of bankers in charge of our monetary system, and they've been ripping us off and turning us into wage slaves across this country ever since. And through taxation with the federal income tax, it's nasty business. So, for Joseph, if you're listening to Arizona and you really like this thing, it's called the Occult Art of Law, something I've mentioned on the shows and I've played occasionally over the years. It's an eye-opening version of what our reality is. This thing was a speech, I think, done it was before COVID, I believe. It's Alan of Salisbury. It was an impromptu speech. He stood up. It was Birkbeck University of London, and the speaker that was supposed to go on and in the audience that he was in had canceled, and they spotted him being a guy of university, right? Hey, could you stand up and fill some space for us? Do a speech? And he ripped this thing off, impromptu, no preparations, and it's because of his knowledge that he's able to do such a great understanding of how the world works. So I'm gonna start into the beginning of this. We're gonna hit the commercial break, and hopefully you'll enjoy this. And like I said, it's long enough with these commercial breaks. It may not get it all done before this hour is up, but I thought I'd fill the space with some really good content. I used to play this on the radio station. It's strong enough to make me want to buy a lot of gold. And if you want to buy gold and silver, the specials we had yesterday, we'll carry those through today. So look those up. Call 800-951-0592 and get a hold of the ladies over there and place your order, because gold and silver is going to financially save you in tough times coming ahead. So let's get about a minute of this going, and we'll play it again, continue playing it the rest of the show.
I had been asked to give a lecture at Birkbeck University, London, but while sitting in the audience for another lecture, we were told that the lecturer had cancelled. After being spotted in the audience, I was then asked by the organisers if I would be able to stand in and give a spontaneous lecture there and then. What you're about to hear is a recording of that spontaneous lecture, loosely entitled An Introduction to the Occult Art of Law. I kind of set upon this subject called law.
There we go. There's the introduction. Just as I said, we'll come off the break, and you're going to have an open mind when you think about what he's going to talk about is how the world's working today. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Patriot Radio News Hour. All right, here we go. We're going to continue. We just barely started this. It's a speech by Alan of Salisbury. It's about 5 years old. He did this at the Birkbeck University of London. And it's more of a reality of what we actually are living in. The society we live in is not so everything you hear is fake. If you're watching television, pretty much there's something that's a lie about pretty much everything you're watching. So one reason I buy and sell gold is because it's not a lie. You either have an ounce in your hand or you don't. So let's continue.
One of the first guys I met was a guy called John Harris. Some of you may know him. He's passed away last year, and we became friends. It was only through knowing him and doing a lot of research that I realized just how much hold law has over us and our lives and the way we think and the assumptions we make. There's a whole different language. It's known as legalese. It sounds like English, but it isn't. It's got very specific, well-defined meanings, which is why it takes so long to get a legal qualification. And I guess I better start at the beginning. On one side you've got law, and on the other side you've got legal. And they're two entirely different things. Never the twain shall meet, really. To make it quite simple, all acts, statutes, instruments, and what is legal is not law. It's only given the force of law if you consent. Okay? So that just goes on to one side. Legislation are the rules of a corporation, whereas law is kind of natural. It's something you're born with. It's like, as a child, most of us know the difference between right and wrong. It's one of those reasons why I guess they don't want to teach law in school, because children already know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, if you were going to be taught what law was, then you'd know the difference between right and wrong, and you'd be able to see through the kind of society we're living in now. So there are good reasons why they don't want to teach you law from a very young age. Believe it or not, we used to have a culture that did teach law at a very young age, but that was, quite a few thousand years ago now, and you've got to do quite a serious bit of digging to find that. So law is what we have. The last vestiges of that are what's known as common law. And if you ask a lawyer what law is, he'll probably say, well, law is law. But law is basically rules, maxims, bars that have remained uncontested over time. All right, that's the important bit. They've been uncontested over time. So what we have now, let's go through some of these words, and I'll translate them into English, and then you can see how profound their meaning really is. If we take the first one, the first word is registration. We're told to register so many times. We buy a piece of software, it's not going to work until we register it. Our cars registered, our children are registered, all kinds of things were registered. This word, we're letting somebody know that we exist or something when we register to vote. What does it mean in legal terms? It's very specific meaning. When you register something, you are giving away whatever you are registering to whoever you're registering it with. Let that sink in, because it's really profound. Register means you are giving away whatever you are registering to whoever you're registering it with. So you buy a piece of software, it doesn't work until you register it. So you register it, which means you're giving it away. And they're saying, okay, well, you can have it back with a magic secret code, but only under our terms and conditions of use. What we'll do is we'll grant you a license. And if you're in breach of that license, then there's consequences for that. Sounds bizarre, isn't it? You buy something, you think, well, that's mine. I'll buy that. It's mine. It's fine. No, in order to read it, you've got to give it back. But I've already paid for it. And when you read it, there are terms and conditions applied to how you read it, and maybe what information you divulge from what you've read. So you can see it's a way of tying you up. But let's go on a bit further. Let's look at this word application. It's one of those things we do a lot. To get a job. Application. 17th century translation to that. As it is today, application means you are a beggar. And it's presumed you know what you're giving up in order to get what you're begging for. Submit. It's not like, oh, I'll submit this to you. Submit means you bend to another's will. So if you submit an application to register, what you've done in terms of legal is you've given up all your rights voluntarily. Because remember, there's laws against slavery, but there isn't any law against voluntary slavery. We've been deceived, and it is a deception. It's an immaculate deception, really, when you start getting to the bottom of it. But let's go to the next bottom line here. What else do you register? Well, you register your birth, don't you? Your birth is registered, and you get a certificate. And if you look at that certificate, and it's an incredible document, really, when you start reading it with legal eyes, you just think, oh, it's got the mother's name in it. It hasn't got the mother's name. It says informant. And on the back of it, remember, it's got the Crown Corporation logo on it. By the way, the Crown is a corporation, it's not the Queen. On the back of it, it says, this is not proof of identity. Well, you think how many documents are derived from that birth certificate? Your driving license, your passport, your NHS thing, all of it comes from it. So if it's not proof of identification, what does it mean legally? So you're kind of left with this conundrum. I've registered my birth. I've got this bond back. Bond. Bond is an abbreviated word. Where do you think the word bond comes from? It's really obvious. It comes from bondage. You've been registered. When you register something, you give something away. You've been given into bondage to the Crown Corporation. This is legally what it means. If you're given into bondage to the Crown Corporation, and we can prove it because there's a certificate that says that's the case, what does that mean? What's the bottom line here? Well, I'll go back to a little bit of history now. I haven't got anything behind me, but those of you who used to play Monopoly probably can remember that a pound sign used to kind of be like this, and it had two lines through it. Remember that? And the dollar sign had kind of like this S, and it had two lines through it. So it had two lines through it. Now, the pound used to be called sterling. It was called sterling for a reason, and it was based on silver. And of course, in America, the dollar had the same two lines through it, and it was all the silver dollar. That's what it was. But in 1929, the banks owned everything. They owned absolutely everything because of a thing called the Wall Street crash, which they brought about into existence. And then they also changed things. They changed the pound sign so it had one line through it, and the dollar sign so it had one line. So they removed one line. Well, if the banks owned everything, the money in circulation then has a different value. There's something else backing it. If silver isn't backing it anymore, what is backing it? And around about the same time in 1933, a guy called Colonel House, who worked for the Rothschilds banking cartel, among other people, came up with this idea of registration. And he's quoted as saying, not 1 in a million people will work this out. Because they had to, if the banks own everything, then the country's bankrupt. They have to find a way of carrying on business and commerce, don't they? So they need something else that's backing that currency. The way that it works, and I'll give you a process, because I'm a shrink as well, but I'll give you a process. We deal with things in terms of process, because you can get lost in content, which is the detail of things. So if I was, say, for example, a dairy farmer. Now, I'm a dairy farmer, and the bank says, sorry, Alan, we've lent you all the money we can, we're going to foreclose on you, you're bankrupt. But good news is we'll keep you on as a manager, seeing as you know a bit about what you're doing. So we now own your farm, and you now work for us. But what we'll do is for every calf that's born, we'll extend you credit based on the milk and cheese and meat that it's going to produce in its lifetime. You register that calf with us, and we'll extend you credit based on the milk and cheese and meat it's going to produce in its lifetime. Well, you are the cattle. You are those calves, because when your births were registered, money, it's called a fiat currency, is put into circulation, and it's based on the wealth that you can create in your lifetime. Your labour. That's basically what it is. I tend to look at that term as your sweat equity. So that's what backs currency. It's a promissory note. A promissory note is a negotiable instrument. Banks deal in negotiable instruments. It gets worse, believe you me, it gets worse. And I'm probably going a little bit too far, but I guess the point of this talk is to hopefully stimulate you guys to do your own research. So if I can throw enough stuff at you and go, what that guy said can't be true, it can't possibly be true, I'd say, I'll welcome you. Do your own research and find this out for yourself, because the more people that know this, how we're caught in this situation, the more people that have the knowledge about it, the easier it will be for us to get out of this trap. It does get worse. It gets much worse, actually, when you look at it. For example, there's a thing that goes along with the birth certificate. A bond is created, obviously, a contract, and that's worth money. The original title of this talk was going to be the occult significance of law, because most people don't think there is anything occult about law at all. And those that would do any research would go, oh, that's absolute rubbish, Alan, that can't possibly, that I'll totally reject that. And by rejecting it, lose the opportunity to begin to comprehend what's really going on. Because there is a very strong occult aspect to law. And the reason they dress the way they do, and the terminology and the language that they use as well. In fact, it's very much an occult art. It is, in fact, the occult art of law. To be a member of the Bar Association goes back to Venice, the Venetians, which isn't a million miles away phonetically from the Phoenicians, who were kind of a race of pirates around the Mediterranean as well. And we have our laws are broken down into different forms of laws, and one of them is called the law of the sea, and one of them in the British Empire was known as Admiralty law as well. So it's very much the law of the sea. The law of business, the law of commerce, the law of money, the law of trading. Trading in slaves, trading in bales and bonds and surety. In fact, the word courtio, which is where we derive the word court from in Roman times, means to deal in bonds and surety. If you wanted justice, you'd go to the Basilica. That's where you would get justice. Not a court. Court just deals in bales and bonds. The bench is a place, if I'm a king and I own a marketplace, I've got my guys who are on my firm there, they've got a bench and they settle the disputes in the marketplace, in the bonds and the sureties, what goes on there. If someone sold something, it's been underweight, then my guys come in and they decide what to do. And if you want to trade in that marketplace, you sign a contract. You have to be allowed, you get a license to trade. Remember I say you register, something's given to you, it's taken back to you. There are now terms and conditions. If you want to trade, you have to register your business.
Just to give you an update, Gold and silver, which was started this morning down, has been running pretty good. Silver was up almost $1 just a little bit ago. It's $32.60 for an ounce of silver, and gold is pushed almost to record highs. It's coming back. It's gold and silver's moving up and down, guys, really fast today. $26.60 to gold right now. Stay tuned. We'll have more with the occult art of law when we get back.
Like, no, sir.
Welcome back
yes,
to the Patriot
man.
Radio News Hour. I am your solo host, Jason. Joe had a secret mission to go on outside the confines of Arizona, so I'm bringing you something interesting to listen to, which is the world you live in isn't what the TV and your teachers and everybody told you it is. It's a little different. It works a little different. And Alan of Salisbury, it's a speech from several years ago in London. I know a lot of this is pertaining to their system specifically in London and in England. It's the exact same here. So just keep that in mind if some of the terminology is slightly different because it's Europe, England versus America. But let's continue on with the occult art of law, Alan of Salisbury.
You have to give it all away, and it all comes under one heading, one big pyramid under the top of it, the Crown Corporation. They own it all the businesses, the whole thing. They own it all. It's registered to them. They decide what goes on. They own the money that you have. You think, this is my money in my pocket. It isn't. It's a promissory note. And your tax, some of the tax you pay, is the rent for using that. It's theirs. They own it all. It makes sense when it's explained like this. People say, I'm going to pay a tax, I'm going to keep this. And it's rent for their money. They own you. And the occult aspect of it is that they own your mind, your body, and believe it or not, they believe, these guys are completely off their dials, your soul. This is why they have all the gold, because gold is an immortal metal. This is why they like the precious, they like all that gold. That's why they hold it all. And that's why they circulate money. They now own everything. They have you in bondage. It's a slave-based society. And it's a voluntary slave-based society. You've volunteered. You've entered into a contract. So when you go...
There's a graphic here that's because there is a little bit of video that they added to this speech. Vatican City is the center of worldwide religion. The City of London is the worldwide center of finance, and Washington, D.C. is the worldwide center of military. All three are separate states, completely independent of their respective countries.
For example, it even gets worse. You're part of a, believe it or not, a death cult. The three forms of law, the first is the Uniform Commercial Code, the second is canon law, the Holy See, and the highest form of law, believe it or not, in this country is Talmudic law. Babylonian Talmudic law.
Talmud.
Okay, so the first form of law deals in bonds and surety and you as a slave. And as you're owned, they can do exactly what they like to you, and that's exactly what they do. They extend the credit based on the milk and cheese. All right, so you register to vote. I'm just outlining stuff here to hopefully stimulate your own research. You register to vote means you're giving away whatever you're registering to whoever you're registering it with. So what's the process here? Let's just look at the difference. What happens when you vote? You go in there and they give you a bunch of guys you can vote from, and they say to you, you've got to put an X on the box, don't they? And you follow that and you put an X on the box. Only incompetents or illiterate people sign with an X. And what you do when you register to vote, you say, I'm giving up my responsibility. I'm illiterate, and I agree, I'm a mental health outpatient, and I'll prove this by marking an X on this. And what I do, I will give whoever I put that X against power of attorney. You're giving them power of attorney over your life. In other words, if you were some old guy in a mental hospital who's lost his marbles and the lawyer says he can't manage his affairs anymore, we've got to give someone power of attorney to manage all his finance, to do everything for him, and they get him to sign, and now you give him power of attorney, that person manages your life. So not only do they own you, mind, body and soul, you've now voluntarily registered and giving them power of attorney over your life. So you basically say to them, I'm a mental health outpatient, which is why you vote in a ward, because the giant mental asylum, you're in a ward, If you prove to them that you're an illiterate, you put the X on there, and you registered to vote, you've given away your rights, and now you've given them power of attorney. In other words, you say to them, I've let you decide what you think is best for me. If we want a war, that's fine. I've got no say in it. And what they will do is like, shall we say, the deranged young son who's managing, has got power of attorney over his great-grandmother, who's spending all the money on drugs and resources like that. He'll tell her what she wants to hear. What do these politicians do? They'll tell you what you want to hear. That's the way they're playing the game. Above a mental health outpatient, which you've proved yourself to be in their game, is the House of Commons. They're commoners. So you're less than a commoner. People come to me and they say, about the Magna Carta, Alan, that gave us all the rights and all the other stuff. The Magna Carta deals with baron. Baron, French for free man. You're not free. You're a bonded slave. Magna Carta is only pertinent and has any meaning to somebody who's not a bonded slave. So you'd have to be in the House of Lords today to be able to have any power or sway with the Magna Carta as a baron, as a free man. And the House of Commons, people like David, they're less than that, and you're right down there. You've got no rights at all. You voluntarily gave them up. You're a mental health outpatient that's given away power of attorney on a regular basis to a different bunch of guys who tell you what you want to hear, and they lie to you over and over again. How much more proof can you give them that you've lost the plot? This is the way they look at it. This is the way they trick you. This is the way they deceive you. This is the way, because the way the universe works is they don't want the blame of it. It's not us. Look, I'll prove it to you. Look, they signed here. This is your signature. Signature, that's another one. Signature means sign of nature. You proved yourself to be a living being, and you've made a mark on a piece of paper called a signature that proves you've got a sign of nature, because they've created a thing called a person. Person means legal fiction. Legal fiction means you become liable. All your bills are written to you in capital letters. Everything to do with money, bank, rent, commerce, everything is you in capital letters, addressed to you in capital letters. This is where you get the term capitalism from, because your life has been monetized and capitalized. As a bonded slave, you are what back that currency, and you've given them power of attorney. You've given them power. You can moan, you can whinge all you like, but they'll just say no to the universe in their magical system. Sorry, but it's not on us. You signed, you gave us your signature, isn't it? You voted for that, you registered it. It's on you. You're responsible.
The responsibility is yours. You signed the line. That's the occult art of law. Alan of Salisbury. We'll have more of that on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. 800-951-0592. The Patriot Trading Group, Gold and Silver. Give us a call. Check out the website, allamericangold.com. You can check the prices out. Gold and Silver has been on quite the ride today. Up and down it goes. Lots of volatility coming, guys. We'll be talking more about that stuff on Monday, but I'm going to continue on with the occult art of law, Alan of Salisbury.
Because the whole system works on an occult way on curses. It's an old curse system that goes back 5,000 years. It's dark magic. It's based on curses. It's based on sacrificing. It's based on blood sacrifice and all that stuff. Cursing, that's what it is. What do you think that money is? It's a curse. Based on your life that's been taken from you, you've been hoodwinked out of it. I mean, hoodwinked, that's a 33 and a third degree Mason maybe will tell you, but you've been hoodwinked. And they're lifting the veil, and what I'm telling you is part of that process. How do you think these guys get away with stuff? If I say to you, what's your name, and you give me your name, you've basically said in legalese, I'll contract with you, and I'm a bonded slave, I don't have any rights. I gave them up. But if you want to think on your feet, and I'm a police officer, and I say, what's your name? And you say, what makes you think I have such a thing? Ask the question, because if you're asking, you're as king. You've got some status then. Because they all work, they act, and they behave in a manner, it's called implied right of consent. They are going to behave in a manner that suggests to them that you've all consented, and unless you rebut that consent, unless you stop that, unless you say, hold on a minute, I'm not consenting, I do not consent to this, I am not a name, I'm standing under common law, if you want a contract, I'll be happy to contract with you, my fee is £900 an hour, do we have a contract, yes or no? What's he going to do? I know a guy, you can find it on the YouTube thing, drunken driving. He's driving his car drunk, the police pull him over. They say, what's your name? He says, I'll be happy to accept your offer of service. My fee's £900 an hour. Well, right, we'll arrest you then. Because that's what they normally do. They'll kidnap you until you give them your name. If you get caught on a train and you haven't got a ticket, they'll kidnap you until you give them the name. Because they want what's a thing called joinder, which is your name and address and your birthday. Because they want your bond. They want the details of your bond. They want that for a very good reason. And I'll get back to that in a minute. So he gets arrested, he goes in there, and eventually the sergeant's there, and we've got this guy, he won't give us our name, we'll put him in the cell, then he's drunk, da-da-da-da-da. They let him go the next day.
You want me there?
Yeah, the point is that they let him go. The reason, here's another one, that it's really mind-blowing the way the whole stitch-up goes, is that bond that was created at your birth, there's a thing, fancy French word, it says c'est que vie, which means for the benefit of another. It was something that was created after the Great Fire of London, when they were trying to find out all the dead people, all those people that were missing and all the other stuff. But on one side, but on the other side, they were trying to raise a new form of currency, of credit, because remember these guys, these Templars had done it before. How do you think they financed those big, nice Gothic cathedrals and all the rest of that with their money lending, international banking scams and all that? But that's another history. But in 1666, after the Fire of London, they created a c'est que vie trust. The way they work it in terms of the occult side, they say, okay, you're born, you're created by the divine. Therefore, you inherit the earth. And you inherit in abundance. If you can go on the internet, you can check it out. If we lived in the whole planet, 7 billion people lived in the same population density as Paris, we'd take up less than half the size of Texas. All the rest of the space on the planet would be left there. That would be it. It would probably be crowded and horrible and all the rest of it, but that's about it. So you inherit, if you want to work it out, I took the time and trouble to do it actually. If you looked at it, you can do it online, work out all the nice...
There's another graphic here. It says if everyone lived as densely as they do in Manila, the entire human race could fit in the country of Tunisia with no people anywhere else on the planet. So it's, the overpopulation thing is kind of a graphic that it's not really what people think it is.
It's arable, usable land, not the desert this guy was trying to claim, but that's there now, divided by 7 billion people. Each one individual gets 4 areas the size of Twickenham rugby field. All right? And that's good. That's your birthright. Exactly. That's 4 Twickenham-sized bits of dirt. That's your birthright. But, of course, your mother registered you. So they take that asset, don't they, off you? That's your birthright. It's taken from you straight away. But what they do is they monetize it because they monetize you and that asset. And that asset is supposedly, from some researchers, I can't confirm it, but I know there's one lady that came here, she actually managed to find it, around about £2 million. So you've got an account that you don't know anything about that's worth about £2 million in today's money. And what happens is this. When your electricity bill comes through, there's like this little check thing at the bottom, isn't there? It looks like an old-fashioned check, and it's got like 3 banks on it. Santander, National Westminster, or something like that. And it says take it to a post office, fill it out, and stamp it, and all the other stuff. Okay, here's a little secret for those who aren't hoodwinked. Every debt that you incur with a corporation is zeroed or settled, because remember, it's not real money, it's credit, in 90 days. So any registered company that have got joinder, your name and address and your birthday, can apply to the Crown.
We'll cover a little more of this on the other side. You're listening to the Patriot Radio News Hour. Jason, solo host. We'll finish this thing up for the week. 800-951-0592. Gold and silver. Patriot Trading Group's been doing it for a long time. And go to allamericangold.com. You can look at a lot of articles that we post there. The prices of what we sell by clicking on the shopping page. It's highly advisable in the wacky world we live in to have a little solid actual commodity sitting there that, if you lived in North Carolina right now, West North Carolina, it's there's electricity's out and 3-hour lines at the gas station and stuff going gold and silver and can really help you in those times. And it seems like we have more of this stuff coming. So I'm going to play a few more minutes of the occult art of life. Here we go.
Corporate takeover of the planet is they get their bills paid for twice. They get it paid by the corporation, because corporations can print their own promissory notes or bills of exchange and negotiable instruments. But what they do is they get it from the second way of funding, which is the money they put into circulation, which is your sweat equity. So they get paid from your bond account, which you don't know anything about, and they get paid by the money that you've had to go and work for, and you pay that bill off. So they get paid twice. And corporations, that's what they do. And the guys that are high up in the financial aspects of those corporations know this stuff. I've dealt with them. And you can play this stuff. You can say to the council tax or whatever it is, that's already been paid. It's 90 days. It's outstanding. It's been done. Prove to me that it wasn't. It hasn't been paid for. And they can't. Because what they're doing is they're technically committing a fraud. Because they're asking, it's a fraudulent, isn't it? If I say, this costs that much, and you've already paid for it, and I try to get you to pay for it twice, it's fraud, isn't it?
For the normal people.
Double bubble, isn't it? It's called double tipping. Okay, but this is all part of the system that we're living in. You've got all this stuff, all those rights, all that economic power. The corporations are playing a game. When I was a kid, it used to be called Piggy in the Middle. Corporations one side, and they've got this account, and they throw it over you, because you're down here like that, and the other one catches it. Thanks for the money, I've got that. And you don't even know you've got that account. The occult aspect of it, again, is like when you have to go to court, you're actually being invited to a dark ritual, which is why you're summoned. You're summoned to appear. Like you're some sort of ghost or a spirit, because that's what they think you are. Because that trust that's worth money, they don't tell you about it, but you could have reclaimed that within 7 years. But after 7 years, the law of salvage comes along, and the government say, okay, well, that's a wreck, well, we'll have that. So they salvage that, and they use that. So you can't get it anymore. Even though they know in the real world you're alive and flesh and blood, because you've got your national insurance thing, you go to the NHS, they know you're physical, they'll take blood from you, all the other stuff. This occult system doesn't see it. They're off their dial, these guys, unless we begin to see that this is what's really going on. Instead of just going, oh no, this is just preposterous, absolutely preposterous. How can this possibly be the case? Unless we kind of just, open up our horizons a little bit, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, and go, okay, well, I'll entertain this for a while. I'll do a bit of research and see if there's anything what this crazy guy was talking about.
And that's the best thing to do. If anything that you don't understand or you totally disagree with, go look it up, see if this guy is full of it. I've done the same thing. First time I heard this thing, it's like, well, I had to dig even more. I've heard stuff like this before, but this guy puts it in a nice little 40-minute speech. Have a good weekend, guys. And Joe and Jason will be back on Monday to do more.